Welcome to another episode of Modern Black Man Podcast. You know what it is. I got my beautiful co-host joining me today, and we're going to have a conversation about relationships. I am so blessed. I got It's Michelle from the It's Michelle podcast, holding it down for NYC. Thank you. You just say barely?
I said barely. I don't know. NYC, it's up in flames right now.
What's going on?
Listen, I have a love-hate relationship with New York City. Unfortunately, I've lived here my whole life, but I think I'm just over the city. So, yeah.
I think we should definitely discuss this a little bit. I just left DC. Love DC. That's where my heart is.
It's a nice place.
It's a nice place, right? But it's a little crazy. And I thought leaving, I would go to greener, easier pastures. And to be honest with you, I'm in a crazy situation now. I moved to Texas. I haven't lived in Texas in like almost 20 years. And rent is stupid. It's just like probably as much as it was out east, maybe a little bit less, but there's so much more space and so many more people. And instead of dealing with traffic on like the Eisenhower Wilson Bridge, or going to PG on the Frederick Douglass Bridge, you know what I'm saying? Instead of that kind of traffic, you've got miles and miles and miles of jets and highways and different levels, and I can relate.
Yeah, I'm over. I tend to tweet our new mayor from time to time. I always tell him I can't keep defending you. And I'm hoping that one day he'll see it and be like, who is this girl? I need to find her because she's defending me somewhere. What am I doing wrong?
So, Eric Adams, right?
Yeah, Eric Adams.
He's dope.
But that's why I keep defending him, because sometimes he says some things and he does some things. I'm like, Mr. Adams, now you know you're not supposed to be saying that. Cut it out.
But how hard is that to be a cop in that city with, you know what I mean, with all of the unique problems and to be good at it, to be smooth at it?
It is very difficult. My fiance is a retired police officer. He was NYPD for about, I want to say, 8-10 years. I'm sorry, I don't remember the numbers. And it was extremely difficult. Very difficult. The amount of things that he's seen, everything he's been through, he's just like, I wouldn't go back. He's like, I loved it. It was great. I served our city, but I'm glad it's over and I'm out. So
I'm curious about this, and I'm going to make this a brilliant segue. With all of that being said, trust and belief, the foundation of everything that makes every connection great. Does he believe in justice? Does he believe in rights? The people, if you could surmise this veteran police officer's view of the world and what he truly believes in, what would you say that is as his partner?
It's definitely frayed a little. Like, I know before, even after, like immediately after, he would see things, he'd be like, oh, that's wrong, they should be doing this, they shouldn't be doing that. And then now he's just like, I see why people do what they do. And when he was a police officer, he said he always tried his best to be one with the community, but there were just many other cops who, excuse my language, were assholes. And it's basically, you were picked on in high school and you decided to become a cop because you get a gun and some power, and you're just, a piece of crap to the people within your own community. And he's just like, it's a different NYPD right now. So
I could only imagine. I'd love to have that as a whole topic. If you would grace me with your presence again, I would absolutely love to talk about that. But empathy is what this man got in his journey. And that's inspiring to me. I appreciate you sharing that, because wow, to believe, I think that's everything. And in our topic for today of relationships, I think that that's what the foundation that we're all looking for in our relationships. We're looking for like this truth, right? In relating to another person, there's a purity that we try to forge in our bond. So as we delve into relationships, share with me your perspective on this interpersonal dynamic, on maybe how things could, should, and do work with us as people.
I mean, we're just different creatures, right? We're all so
Mhm.
different. And it's very difficult just to find one person that you kind of relate to and it's
Yeah.
steady and nothing messes up. And I think that was because that was definitely my fear, right?
Mm.
Initially, just even dating. Um, it was just very different for me because I'm like, I'm super quirky, I'm funny. It doesn't like I don't get offended very easily. So some of my
Mhm.
jokes used to offend a lot of people. And I'm just like, but we were going so well. What happened? Like, it was just a joke. So it's like, if you don't
I don't
understand,
believe that. Dudes will leave like you tell
well,
jokes that are so raunchy or
no,
hard hitting that they
no,
make.
either or, but it's just so interesting because a lot of guys would turn around and say, well, you know what, you're like one of the guys, and I'm like, I really am not. Like, that's not my position to play. I don't,
Mm.
I'm not one of the guys. It's just not my personality. It's just, I guess, although we weren't like meshing, and that was okay, like I was fine just being friends. Although we were
Mhm.
meshing, they were fighting so hard to find something for us to like fall in love and be together. I'm just like, it's not working, and that's okay. So it's very
Mm.
difficult because I feel like people are blinded by just nice people instead of thinking of, well, what do I really want? What am I looking for? It's just like, well, this person's nice to me, so you know what, I've been hurt all these other times, forget what I'm looking for, this is it right here. And I'm just like, well, maybe I'm not because I don't feel the same way. So
I
it's
love what you said. I love what you said, settling. And I think that it's so much value when you're in a relationship with someone where you are receiving, right? There's energy that you have that you exchange that you can use it for feeding each other and towards your goals. And I think that we see this in growth, we see this in connection, and probably 30 other dynamics or dimensions of a relationship. But I think that's the key. And I agree with you so much. Um, we give ourselves any excuse to get out of a relationship that it's funny that when we do it, it comes to such a simple string, you know?
right.
You can't really share something productive about your partner. And I think that that's in and of itself sometimes, I'll just say interesting.
I think that's the term. I think that's a good term for it. It is interesting because I
Hmm.
feel we still have a lot left to discover. I mean, I feel like I mean, we're going to get married. I found my soulmate.
Yeah, yeah.
But before that, I always, and I say this every single time, I give this my ex a little too much airtime, but I was
Hmm.
with my ex for 6 years. And
Right.
I think I fell victim to, well, like, I checked all the boxes. There's some things that I really don't agree with, but I'm going to go with them anyway because growing up culturally, I'm supposed to settle down and not everyone is perfect. Exactly. So when you fall prey to that way of thinking,
Yeah.
you're just going to end up in a disastrous relationship.
Yeah.
It's not going to work out. You're going to be very unhappy. You're not going to know why.
This is so good. I mean, okay, we get lulled into a false sense of confidence
Mm,
because of familiarity. Obviously, where we blur the line is when someone becomes too familiar. But how do you really create boundaries in a boundaryless relationship? Because those are the bonds that you forge with people. You've known them since you were in high school, and because they've seen you do this, that, or the other. She was with me when I was broke. Like
right.
whatever the qualifier is, it's all of those things. So I see that perspective, and I look towards our failing point or dysfunction because I think that that is a very interesting note of relationships. Um, I'm very simple, so I'm motivated and kept pacified and happy really easily. But what is that? Do we begin with talking about how the dynamic breaks down, how our relationship, I'm not going to say dissolve yet, but begins to lose its foundation? How do we get there? I love this person. This is my soulmate. I just want to be with her. You know what I mean? Like how do you reconcile these two things? What do we do when our foundation is gone? We lose our faith, our compass gets broken.
That's tough. That is very tough. But again, my last relationship, that's exactly how I felt. I was just kind of going on like autopilot. I would wake up, do what I had to do, go to work, come home, and then repeat. There wasn't anything else. There wasn't any more fun. And it's like I saw the downfall and I just refused to accept it.
Yeah.
I was just like, nope, nope. I was told that through tough times, this is fine. It's okay. But it's not, especially if the other person isn't willing to have the conversation saying that our dynamic is off, what's going on. And I approached this person many times saying, I think there's something wrong. I just can't quite place it. And for him, it was just like, well, you know what? You're too emotional. So for a long time, I was just very kind of stagnant with my emotions. I'm like, well, if I show too much emotions, then that means I have to correct that. I have to be emotionless because
right.
the person he wants. Meanwhile, I'm a whole Pisces who just loves to like laugh and cry and do all this.
Wait a minute, you're a Latina and a fire sign? Or water sign, rather?
I'm a water sign. Right. So I'm just like, this is not me. This is not working.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, he ended up breaking up with me. And of course, I was very sad because, again, onto myself, I kept thinking, well, I did my best. I tried my hardest. I put in my time. But at the end of the day, I realized, well, no, this is the best thing that happened to you, because if not, you would have held on to this thinking, well, this is what I'm supposed to do, because again, my parents taught me this is how you do it. You know, just because you don't feel something for a person doesn't mean anything. You can't be all over the place and Very
I
good.
think there's a slight truth to that in a futurism, right? After a couple of decades, after she's had my kids, sure, I might feel conflicted and have a sense of loyalty, but that's not the only reason why we have a relationship. Absolutely. I concur.
It's tough out here. Well, not for me anymore, but sorry for everyone else. But definitely going through those motions, it was tough. People are weird sometimes,
and they hit so hard, especially the less they're worth. Isn't that just the way that he made us? And in navigating that terrain, you have to really be vulnerable. And I think that's where a lot of people lose. They try to give themselves these false senses of security, as well as ego fulfillment. They just gas themselves, and it's like, yo, like, your relationship is how you prove that. Like, it's some moves. Like, there's a couple things. Like, and instead of doing that, because we're not compelled or driven, motivated by action, but very much by rhetoric and being able to say. And I think that's where we lose in our relationships. How do we get more focused on our actions? Our love languages are obviously coming up next.
Okay.
Right. But how do we cue our partners for action? How do we condition our, I'm not going to say spouses, our other? Because I mean, eventually, that's later in the conversation, but I think eventually it should be driven for marriage, especially if you're an adult. I think that we've got mature relationships mistaken. I think that people feel that meeting financial obligations is really the destination. It's not. Like, that's a byproduct. And I think that putting things on its ear, flipping them, is where we're losing. Relationships.
For a very long time, I used to say, well, I'm never getting married. And because no rhyme or reason, like it wasn't even a valid point. But I would say the people around me, in particular, the women around me, they were so against marriage and being held down, and as long as he pays the bills, it's okay. And so
I know submission was definitely a hot buzzword, that just mentioning it. Okay, I see. Right. I'm the worst one for that. I'm the worst one to bring around, because I will make that point. Like, why do you think I'm banging your sister? Like, what do you think I take care of her, right? I would not want to say something disrespectful like that.
Of
But
course, no.
sensically and logically unveiling it, yes. Like, that's what this is all about, is human connection. And I would love to get deeper into the whole submission topic with you, but the women around you were saying.
Yeah, the women around me, they just were not about that life. They were, they
Mhm.
were either married or I knew our next door neighbor growing up, her husband was incarcerated
Mhm.
and she held him down. She had his daughter, everything was fine. He also had a son outside marriage, but she ended up, like, I don't want to say cheating on him because he was incarcerated, but and they are married. So I guess, yeah, cheating on him, got pregnant by someone else, had his kid. He comes out and she's just like, well, this is your new daughter, because then the baby's daughter was just like, I want nothing to do with this. And so she was left to raise this new baby girl on her own. And who held her down when he came out of jail and all that stuff? So for me, seeing that, I'm like, this does not make sense. Like, the math just ain't mathing for me. I don't understand. Like, I don't want that life. That's not what I want. That's not what I aspire to want. It doesn't look good for me. So
Okay, absolutely.
right. So seeing all these women around me kind of do the same thing and bash men all the time. And, men are only good for their money. If they don't bring no money, then, and I'm just like, wait, so what happened to love? Like, does love exist? Is love a thing?
Oh, love's off the table. Love's off the table because it's all
Yeah.
about things. And just like we're talking about love, right? Or I'm sorry, we're talking about the bills getting paid. It's tangible
Right.
because people don't know how to submit and or provide actions of love because we're provided egos by society. Our society allows men to, I think, especially in the 50s, the 40s, let's take it back into time. Um, Control and dominate a woman's life options and decisions, right? On the everyday. And now, because women are outpacing us, they don't have that same control that I think men had on them. So I think the dynamics are very interesting. But for a woman, your connection is so much more valuable because I don't think all men are scum, but I think that all people are scum. I think that we all suck.
We have
And
so many people.
but we learned it that way because we've all been hurt and everybody has their trauma and then they react. They come into the world with this new face, this mask, whatever you want to call it. And I ain't gonna submit to no man. Only kind of man I'm gonna submit. He'll have a private jet. You know what I mean? They say like just dumb, absurd things. Like no, like I don't want no drug dealer with a monkey. I want a drug dealer with a giraffe. Like what? Like this makes no sense. But for whatever reason, we're all dealing with our stuff. And tradition is what we're shunning. And I think tradition is our salvation. I think that people truly understanding what submission is, because marriage is creating an equal flesh. I hate saying genderless, but it's not about gender. As one flesh, you make moves that benefit everyone. And as a team, as a unit, you thrive. And everyone is conditioned in this earth to survive. So
Absolutely.
very interesting stuff.
And I love that you said team because I didn't hear that around me growing up, surviving, being an adult. I never heard, oh, marriage is a team or this is a team effort. I never heard that.
Right.
Ever. So for me, I came in and I'm just like, well, fine. Since no one told me how this is going to be or how it's supposed to be, then who am I? How am I going to do this? How am I going to work this?
How did you find your way?
Well,
Who influenced you?
I've always been like, I love to, like, I work in medicine, so I love caretaking. I love taking care of people. I'm very empathetic. I love to communicate. So I just went in with that instead of just trying to be a persona and then switching up on somebody, as soon as we start getting, or he starts feeling an inclination of, you know what, I might like this girl. So from the very beginning, I was very open with who I was, what I wanted to do in life. He was very open. And that's just how I took it. I didn't take advice from anybody, especially no one. I'm not talking to anyone who's single, and I'm not talking to anybody who is not married. You are not giving me advice because it's useless. You're not telling me anything I need to know. If anything, you're trying to bring me back to the league, trying to bring me back to the single ladies league, and that's not
You
what
said
I'm
my jersey's up in the rafters. I'm
Right.
the greatest to ever do it.
Right, I'm about to be MVP real quick, man.
Right.
Like, I'm not
Right.
coming down to your level. And
Mhm.
nothing against those women or those men, those people who don't want to get married and they don't have that sense of submission. But I do. I feel
You
like
can't offend them. You can't.
Right.
And I this is the Modern Black Man podcast. Let me just tell you, feelings are important and people matter, but you can't offend them. So I won't even accept that. Making your decision that's best for you, that puts you in the best position, is what I would want for you. So getting there, arriving there, that journey gives you a position, and you're going to lead with that, and your community, you know what I mean, your family, the people that interact with you, like that's a palpable power, right? It's potent. So amen. Absolutely. And I mean, it's amazing how glaringly obvious it is in the women that don't value relationships. It's I think all of us dealing with our trauma. Maybe it's easier for me to see because it's the opposite sex, but certainly we deal with these things in the ugliest ways. But how can we spread more positivity to show people? I would probably call this morality at church. I don't know what I would call this at school, but it really is the way that we move in this world. So, I mean, I don't think that I would fault myself for being single or unmarried, but my goal is marriage, right? And I associate with like-minded women because I value that institution. I think that there's a lot of people that have shown me in this world how disrespectful you can be towards marriage. And in approaching this goal, what safeguards do you feel a woman could have for her relationship, for her walk as a bride?
What safeguard?
Safeguards, practices, habits, traditions. How do you sharpen that knife? Because it used to just be cooking, but I've never had a female that can cook, and that's probably just because I can, right? But how do you sharpen that knife?
I mean, I don't know. That's difficult because I've known some women who are like, well, I'll do everyone's laundry. And I've known women who are just like, nope, I only do my laundry and my children's laundry. He can do his own laundry. And I'm just like, well, if I'm with my husband, I'm doing everybody's laundry. Like right now till today, we share dishes. And I tell him all the time, I'm like, no, you don't have to. So one day if I cook, he'll do dishes. If he cooks, I'll do dishes.
Hell of a man.
Right. And I'm just like, well, you don't have to do any of that. He's like, no. And like, we're all the girls here, like myself, my daughter, and
women like you don't exist.
Listen, the little one, we're not allowed to take up the trash. He's like, no, we can take up the trash. Why do you have to take up the trash? So I think little things like that, I'm just like, wow, I really value this. And I didn't have that before. So before, my ex would do his laundry and he'll be like, oh, I left your laundry there. Or I would offer to do his laundry. He's like, yeah, no, I'm good. It's okay. So I should have already known from the beginning this wasn't marriage material. And that's fine.
What would you do if a man did those things?
What? Did my laundry and things like that?
Cooked, did laundry, did the dishes.
What would I do? Well, my fiance.
You would still need to clean and have a job and do everything else in life. I'm just saying, what would you do if a man brought those things to the table? Because
but I think that's a beautiful thing. That's why that's I think that's a beautiful thing. However, I'm not expecting it.
Okay.
It's not something that's like on my checklist, like, oh, he better offer to do my laundry and he better help me with the dishes. That did not, like, this was just our dynamic and how we ended up working out because we had so many kids in the house and we wanted to help each other as a team.
But it's not a skill that doesn't translate. It's a love language. And your man knows. Right. Yeah. Like, I don't know how to articulate that, but that's what relationships are supposed to do to you. And people try to fight it for whatever reason because that's what our culture breeds. And I'm all for it, do what you do, but there's a lot of value in tradition. So I don't know why do we strive to be like this?
I don't know. I think it's just our culture now. It's kind of it's the fad. Let's say it's the fad. The fad is to be a hot girl, a city girl. The fad is to be a fuck boy. Do what you got to do. And I feel like that's just the culture we're in now. Not a lot of people are talking about marriages. Not a lot of people are talking about
Nobody's having babies.
no, which listen.
Birth rate's gone down.
Some of them don't need to be having. Some of them don't need to be having babies. Some of them don't need to be out here having babies. So I think maybe I might. I think that's a good thing, but
yeah.
I think it's just culturally right now. It's just I date multiple people until either I'm bored or I find that one person, and then when the summer comes, I'm single, and then just the cycle keeps going over and over and over.
And that's the truth. And I think that that's admirable because women feel they have to speak non-truth as if it will be an indictment of them. Like all of a sudden it makes it their lifestyle if they admit that that's prevalent in culture.
Yeah. Yep.
But yeah, absolutely. And I mean, men too. And you got all the gender stuff that comes with it. I just think that if, what do we do in a world with no relations, where people just hook up, but there really is no more marriage because less than half of people are married now. This is like the first time in history that more people have been single than married, which is weird.
It's like a trend.
It's weird.
Almost. It's a good thing to say, oh, I'm single or I have nobody or I'm talking to this person, but it's not really going anywhere. And I'm talking to 7 other people. You know what I mean? Like, how do you know? My biggest fear is how do you know yourself? Like you're talking to all these people, you're doing all these things, you're in all these relationships that mean nothing, once they're over. So how do you figure out who you are? Like, how do you figure out what you want from your partner? How do you even ever realize what you're
I think that people figure themselves out now in life in general. And what you're talking about is very valuable, but it's not a goal anymore. Because people kind of push that to the side, like, fuck a relationship. I can just do what I want to do. And you know what I mean? Eventually I think everybody knows they'll end up in one. So there's no pressure in it. But I'm feeling from my experience, the people that married younger and stayed together really have something. I think that if you got married at 25 and this is your high school, college sweetheart, you probably don't know yourself like you know yourself now, but having the ability to work with another person and grow with another person, there's a lot of value in that. And we shit on that as a society. We don't value it. We don't give it credence or respect. We're very quick to dismiss it as wasted time because of the exceptions. Because how unfortunate is it that Harold turned 47 and he's been married for 30 years, but all of a sudden his wife is sleeping with her personal trainer or something, right? Like it's devastating, and no one wants to be vulnerable to that. So I definitely think it's a double-sided coin, and I just want anybody that hopes to, be in a relationship or just enjoy their personal relationship with themselves to, do it to the best of your ability and, get what you want out of it. So from someone like myself, I've dated. I think I've gotten good at dating, but that's not what I want to do with my time. I mean, I concentrated some time to make that happen, and hopefully I can, end the situation in marriage, make a dating situation my last, and I hope that happens for me. I appreciate, you kind of. You said on that note, what?
No, I said it will. It definitely will. You'll find that person.
Oh yeah, I have that person. I think. I mean, I've been in a relationship that I was going to kind of talk about some of the dynamics and weird things that I've experienced. I think on the other side, because we over noted. What about a relationship where you don't argue? It can be frustrating,
I
not being able to communicate.
That's frustrating. Well, so I love this because again, too much airtime, but that was my previous relationship. There was no
Mm.
arguing. And he really boasted about that, but I was frustrated. He would tell everyone, well, you know why she's perfect? Because we don't argue. And it's just like, well, sometimes you do have to have
That
argument,
was your ego. That
right?
was your ego.
And I'm just
You
like,
had too much pride to argue and to put words to it,
oh,
and it works both ways.
yeah,
Um,
definitely. Because anytime I would bring something up and I would just say, this is making me feel uncomfortable. We have to talk about it. If not, I'm going to blow up. He would say, you see, this is the problem. You're just way too emotional. And I'm just like,
yeah, you did say, yeah.
and I'm
You
just like, well,
communicate too much.
right. Like, what? I've never heard that before. If
Right.
anything, growing up, when we were young, you have little boyfriends, girlfriends here and there. You don't communicate. You play the silent treatment. Those are little kid, high school, young kid games. So for
Exactly.
me, as an adult with two children, I have this man saying, well, you're too emotional. If this is going to bother you, then, I don't know what you want to do. Like, this is not going to work out. I'm like, so there's just no communication at all, unless it's like something great, fun, positive.
There
No,
you go.
have the uncomfortable
You
conversation.
condition your partner to cut you out when you do that. When you stop communicating and you try to only find the good times, woo, you setting yourself up. That's a huge mistake that people make in relationships. You can't ignore the fights. That is detrimental. Don't let a real one get a hold of your man. Somebody with a, don't let a velvet throat get a hold of your man because you want to argue and ignore him for a day. You
Right.
really will cost you.
Right. All because you're trying to communicate. It's just like, oh, you want to communicate? Fine. You know
Yeah.
what? I'll find somebody else who doesn't want to communicate.
Yeah.
And you know what? Then you guys need to go be happy because clearly this dynamic isn't working. So
It's toxic and it's abusive. It's just so interesting how it plays out. Absolutely, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, I think that sex life is another major area as well as money. That's where I think most people kind of just in their relationship to seek greener pastures. They go where the grass appears to be greener while never watering their own lawn.
this is very true.
Yeah. So what makes us so weak in relationships? Why do we make those stupid decisions? What is that about?
I think it depends on the person. I think sometimes curiosity, that saying, curiosity killed the cat.
Mhm.
People are just so curious. They sit there and they're like, well, you know what? This is good, but what about this? And as soon as you make a statement and you follow it with but, nothing good can happen after that. That's kind of like apologize. Well, I apologize, but then that apology is null and void. It doesn't mean anything. It should
Yeah.
just end in I apologize. I fucked up. I'm sorry. Period. That's what it should be. But
Yeah.
no, it's the same thing with relationships. It's like,
I'm sorry, but you did make me do that.
right. So then you're not really sorry and you're still bitter. Cut it out. You know what I mean? So it's the same with relationships. It's like, well, I'm really happy with this, but this person just sent me a message or did this or winked at me the wrong way. I wonder what that's about. It's just this weird curiosity. And I don't think it's all people. I don't think it's everyone.
I have a
I think
theory.
what?
I'm very vocal about it. I believe that we have two gates. Men, their gates are their eyes, and women, their gates are their ears. So see no evil, hear no evil.
Yeah.
You could talk one out of her draws, right? But a man sees what he wants, And I just think that those are our most sensitive gates. I think as a man, if you want to keep your man, you have to lure his eyes a bit. That doesn't mean that everything you do has to be about that, but you do have to give him that appreciation. And the same thing for men. For me, I feel that learning your words, how you say things with your tone, and reserving privileges for that person is so important and impactful.
Yeah.
I really, really believe that. So,
Definitely.
yeah. There's so much value in that. As far as your love language, what would you say that is?
I don't know. Listen, I am such a sucker for love. Like I and it's just for whether it's relationships, platonics, friendships, whatever it is. I'm just like, we can all just be happy, love each
So
other.
it's not gifts, sex. Okay. There's only
I do but I say all that to say I do love giving gifts. I don't care much for receiving gifts, and when I do, I'm always like super shocked because I swear I'm like the queen of gift giving. But I do love giving gifts, and that's to my children, to my fiance, to my close friends. Like I just love giving them things, looking at their faces, having them be so happy for whatever, as big or as small as it is. I do love that. And of course, I love physical touch because, I love to hug my children. I love to hug my fiance. I love to walk around for no random reason, just pop my head in if he's working in the studio and say, I love you. Period. And I just walk away. Like, this is what we do all day. Or like he'll come into the room if I'm typing up or whatever, and he'll be like, love you. Or he'll walk by the bathroom if I'm showering, love you. But I feel like that's just so necessary because it's like you said, it's a love language. It reminds me that this person is thinking of me.
Right. That's mine. Yeah.
Right. Every time he says that, I'm just like, oh, I'm in here showering. He's just walking by. I love you. Like, that's so sweet. That means, he's thinking of me. Same thing when I give them gifts, especially around the holidays. But that's just my thing. I just love
to appreciate that is so rich. Like, that's really cool. Like, being connected to the person is where the value is, and you just speak it so truly. It's refreshing because usually I think every other time I've had the relationships topic, I think myself included, we all have our stuff. I still have my resentments, but like, you speak so positively and in tune with what love should be. I think that you are invaluable. Being that light is such a true and a pure thing that I want that to just sustain for you as long as possible, eternally.
Yes, I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
I'm trying.
Yeah, it's a lot. Well, to close out, I think I've kind of hinted around it, but what do you do when you argue? How do you solve that with your person? There should be a connection to where you should know the other person to a point that you can execute. But in general, what do you think that is? Is it?
I'm so glad you asked that. So I will say at first, because of the relationship I came from, I was leery of having any arguments or anything, or, making my fiance upset at anything because of the reaction I was getting. Kind of like we were talking about traumas earlier. Right. So for me, that was kind of a traumatic. Right. So I'm just like, maybe I shouldn't say something. So we developed this thing where if we were upset at each other, we like comics and stuff, and we like to watch Marvel movies. We like to watch DC movies. So I said, if we're upset, we just have to do kind of like a Batman voice talking about, we got to talk, just to smooth it in there. Like,
what?
So I would walk around like Christian Bale Batman.
Thank you. That's exactly what was in my mind. Okay.
Like Christian Bale Batman. I would be like, we gotta talk. And he'll be like, oh shit, what's going on? And I'd be like, Rachel. He's like, oh, this is serious.
Wow.
So we would sit there. So eventually,
that's really genius.
Right. And then eventually we came to a point where if something happened, we would literally, even if we were outside and like maybe one of the kids did something, and we would literally excuse ourselves. We go to the bathroom and be like, all right, this is kind of, I'm getting a little mad. There's a reason why. And he'll be like, yeah, we got it. We'll pound it out. Love you. We're good. We'll walk out. And then as soon as we're done with the outing, whatever it is, we'll come home. We'll talk about it one last time. And it is over. Like, it is over. And I think that is the most beautiful thing, because I've never had that. I love talking about it. I think that is the most beautiful thing. And just yesterday, we were talking about some stuff, and I expressed how I felt. And literally, as I'm expressing myself, I'm like, listen, and, I might sound a little angry right now. I'm a little stern, but this is not you, because I love you. You have nothing to do with this. And he's just like, yeah, I appreciate that, man. I really do. And then, boom, this morning, we're just like, so what do you want for breakfast? But that's just our dynamic, and that's how we had to ease ourselves, because he also came from traumatic relationships. So that's how we had to
Are you dating Starsky or Hutch? Like, is he just a good partner because he's used to having one? Like, what? I don't understand this. Like, that's so cool, right? Like, y'all are just linked.
Yeah, so and that's why I say all the time, I'm like, listen, it was just destiny, whatever we
Yeah.
went through right before, because his relationship was really trashy before around the same time my relationship, because we weren't together, of course.
Yeah.
And then we met and we went on a first date and we vibed. And from then it was just like texting and talking, and we were together for about, I want to say 4 years, and then he proposed.
That is so cool. Yeah, yeah. You guys have to share your story with people and continue to be that example. I am so serious. I can't thank you enough for your time. Before I let you go, I really want you to talk about your podcast. I want you to share your social media information with everybody that's listening, and tell us more about the It's Michelle podcast.
So it's Michelle. It's out every Monday. I don't have video yet, but I do have a YouTube channel. So y'all should go subscribe, because I'm working on some stuff, hopefully by mid June, hopefully. Instagram, it's .me.shell, and that's its.mi.chelle. And you hear a lot about this, just my life, relatable stuff, me growing up, people around me, weird shit that happens every day. And again, every Monday, if you want to listen to my audio on all podcast platforms, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcast. I know. Shout out to Google, man.
You know it.
Right? Just come look at us.
Spotify, Apple, I mean, you know, they out here.
iTunes, Good Pods,
Anchor.
all of them. Anchor, right.
The big boy.
They need to be.
That's the OG.
That is the OG. They need to be paying us for this. Yeah, but that's it. That's me.
Absolutely. Y'all already know what to do. It's a boy. Follow me. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're trying to get fresh content as often as possible. And until the next episode, peace.